Hey guys, welcome to another Monday. Yes, Authentic Leadership 101. And we're talking about my favorite hashtag culture. I love it. We're talking about the culture, creating the culture of authentic leadership. And I have the wonderfulest, sweetest, most kindest co host, Tracy Borreson. How are you up there in the Northern Fear?
Oh, good. It is sunny and nice, although the weather is going to come in overnight and make it cold and yucky tomorrow. So we're just enjoying it today.
Yes, we were supposed to here in the Northeast. We were supposed to get kind of like snow, a little bit into rain or whatever. It never amounted to anything. But the cold did blow in. You guys did blow the cold in over here on us. So I gotta say that. Yes, it is
We
cold
need a
outside.
break. It was so cold for so long. We need a
Yes,
break.
it is. It is. So we're talking about the culture today of authentic leadership and being able to create that culture and what does not necessarily what does that culture look like, but what does it look like with you as being an authentic leader creating that culture? I've been on this, I could say, yeah, I guess I could call it a journey. I've been on this journey of trying to educate leaders about creating culture because everybody says, well, I can't bring my authentic self to where I work. Right. And I say, okay, we'll change jobs. And then, the next part of that becomes, well, I can't really afford to change jobs. So I said, well, okay, well, how can we fix this? So I thought this would be something for us good to talk about, or either to give some ideas about, because we don't know if we're going to fix it or not. It just depends on, the circumstances and offering if you can take this information and try to just make some minute changes in just the way that you do or your operating space, to maybe to create some awareness for others and they might join in, right? This is why we do these things. Hopefully, someone gets on board with what we think and what we do, and they'll start doing it with us, and then they'll start respecting us and valuing us, and and so it goes. So, what you think
Well,
about
and
that,
there's
Trace?
there's last week we were talking about intentionality, right? And there's a lot
Yes,
of intention that we need to pay attention to in this arena because if we're looking at the concept of authentic leadership as being like the one right way to lead people, then that's not a thing, right? Like
no,
that's what we believe and that's why we're here having this conversation, but there is no one right way, and as we've said every single episode, I'm pretty sure there's no one right way, there's no one specific way that being authentic looks different to different people. And one of the words I heard you use, Carl Shawn, was you have to fix it, right? And
yes,
every time we think we need to fix something, it's based on the concept of us believing that it's broken.
yes,
And so there's the idea of like, here's a thing, it's broken, I need to fix it or I need to replace it completely. And or there is the ideal of constant improvement, right? And so when we look at things from the perspective of constant improvement, it's a lot easier because we're
yeah,
also then not blaming, right? We're just here to constantly improve. I'm not here to fix it because it's broken, right? I'm here to constantly improve and make this a more enjoyable place to work, a more accepting, more inclusive place to work. And again, we talked last episode about the word better versus other more
better.
specific
I know you don't
words.
like better.
It's just it's just so generic, right? we
Yeah,
don't we don't know what that means, better in what direction. So when we're looking at those types of things, I mean, we talk a lot about inclusivity on this show, support, caring, being able to bring your personal brand to work, right? Like those types of things. And if you're like, let's make the culture better, nobody knows what that means because better to every single person who participates in the culture is actually different. And so being able to identify that one direction of where you want to go is really important. And so I just wanted to, before we got too deep into the weeds of the actual authentic cultures, I wanted to just remind everybody of that when we think things are broken, our default response is fix it or replace it. And we don't actually have to do either of those two things. We can, for lack of a better word, edit it
yeah.
until
I
it
like
gets to the
edit.
point where it's more so what we're looking for.
Yeah, and edit makes the clarity. Edit makes the clarity of I'm going to make it better. I could. I was.
Okay,
I
so
was
let's
trying to
look at
run
this.
through my.
Let's
I was
look
trying
at
to.
like when you're writing, right? In the concept of
Uh,
writing, and you're going to edit it. Right. The
right.
point of editing when you're writing is to, one of them anyway, is to improve your grammar. The other
Improve.
one might be to improve clarity, right?
Right.
So I'm going to edit this because I want to improve clarity, which might be a reason why you want to edit your culture as well. And
Yes.
I want better grammar. That's really more related just to writing. But those, when you can be more specific with those, it's a lot easier than just saying I want to be a better writer. Well, what does a better writer even mean?
Yeah. How do
So,
you define that? Right.
right.
Where's the clarity in there when you say a better writer?
Yeah.
I like the term edit because it takes away. Uh, it actually adds clarity because there's an essence or understanding of knowing that okay, there's something that needs to be done to this so it can be better understood.
Mhm.
That's most of the reason why we edit, right? I know majority of the time it's grammar related, but why we edit things is so someone can have a clarity into what we're trying to explain to them. So I like that term edit because actually that's really in a lot of things in a lot of cultures that's really what we want to do, right? We want to edit the culture that we're in or the environment that we're in because a lot of workers that I've talked to or those that are in these corporate environments or just these cultural environments, they like what they're doing. They just don't like what goes on in the environment that they're doing it in. So I think you hit something on the head there with the term of fixing. They don't think it's well, some do. Some do. Back that up. Some think the culture is broken. That it needs to be tossed, right? But I think for the most part, when people talk about the culture, they're pretty much talking about a couple of nuances, a couple of situations, a couple of things that's going on, maybe repetitively that they don't really like and can't care for. And I don't think it's all inclusive where this is just horrible. And of course, you have some on the other side of the aisle that says my culture just needs to be blown up with some dynamite sticks. It's just horrible.
Well, and in that scenario, even then, we talked about this on my live on Friday. Permission to do you at work, because we were talking about teams that thrive, and
Yes.
there are people who are leading teams that think those teams are working the way teams are supposed to work, and not that it's necessarily good. They might not be particularly happy with it, but they think that's the way it's supposed to be, and
Yeah.
so they have no reason to say blow it up and redo it, right? And so especially if you are somebody who's coming in at middle management or you're younger, like at the beginning part of your journey, and your goal is to move into leadership, you have a unique perspective because of that. So yes, your voice deserves to be heard, and the people who are leading in front of you have grown up in a completely different environment than you have. So when I look at, I think I read a thing a little while ago that said in the next 5 years, the majority of the workforce will be millennials as opposed to the majority of the workforce being boomers. And that is going to
Ah,
change a lot of perspectives because the millennials have been raised to care more about their work life balance. That's a
yeah.
different episode, but like their mental wellness, right? Whereas the boomers were just raised to like, this is what you do when you have a job and you take care of your family, and this is what you do. This is what life looks like.
Yeah.
And challenging those perspectives on it, like head to head, to just be like, you're wrong. Let's be honest, you guys, no one likes to be told flat out that they're wrong, especially when something has been working for them for so long in their career, right? So I think a lot of times when we talk about this culture of authentic leadership, it really is also, and I said this before too, there's so much power in the middle, right? Where I feel like there's a lot of times where the middle feels like you're just getting squashed by both sides and you don't really have anywhere to go. But the middle has the ability to lead down as well as lead up, right? And to be able to create space for those people who have been in leadership positions for the last 20 years in a environment that they're now living in an environment they don't understand. And so
Yeah.
being able to help them, support them, and not just be like, hey, old man, get out of here. It's time for us to take over. Like, no one wants that. As much as we try to keep our egos in check, they're going to show up. And there was an entire population of people who were raised to have the most ego. Like, the more ego you have, the more successful you are in business. And they have also lived that reality for 50, 60 years. So it's hard for them too to be able to shift. So when we talk about authentic cultures, it's not just us leading people, it's us showing up in all of these different relationships and being able to show up with empathy, with compassion, with kindness, with understanding, just accepting that we are
Yeah.
not all going to believe the same thing. And us all believing the same thing is actually quite the opposite of an authentic company culture. Because now we're saying, like, we're all going to be this one thing in this one box, and that's it. That's not authentic. Nobody is that. That's just a lie. So let's just not.
That is definitely that. And I think I said this to you, but I brought up some points, right, when I made the post for this is creating this culture of authentic leadership. I brought up a few steps, 4 steps that I just really thought of what I've really been talking about, besides vulnerability. Right? Everybody knows I talk about vulnerability, but there are other things I talk about. It just somehow or another they just tie back into that. So that's all I talk about, right? So I thought about these ones, and I thought maybe we can hear, or let me hear your point on these, and the audience as well, and those that are watching this live or on the replay. Put in the chat box what you think about these, like as part of, or can you use some? Is it another direction you like to take? Because, like we said, the authenticity is not one thing. Because if it's all of everybody's on one thing, on one mindset of one way of all behaving, can't be authentic, right? Because we can't all behave the same. Now we can all have our goals tied in, our direction tied in. We can be all on one accord in that aspect of what we're doing, but behavior wise, if we all be that, how can we be authentic? I can be authentic if I'm not acting like me, if I'm acting like Tracy. I mean, a lot of our core values align, which is great. So we can just two walk together in that way. We can walk together, but at some point in time, I act like I act, and Tracy act like she act. And that's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thought about this promoting to self awareness. Now, I thought about this as creating a culture, because this is an individual thing that everyone can do that benefits everybody else. And this is why I thought about that. Because if I'm promoting self awareness and everybody else is promoting self awareness, pretty soon we got a pretty much self aware culture that's aware of everyone that's involved in that culture. So, what do you think about that?
So I find self-awareness is interesting to me because
Okay.
you only know as much as you know. Right? And so that allows for a certain amount of self-awareness, but
Mhm.
unless you also have, and I don't know what all four, so this might lead into something coming up,
It's just right,
but
but no, no, give it all, because we can always wrap around it. We can always wrap around it.
there, in order to be truly self-aware,
Hmm.
we have to be open to hearing what other people think about us, right? What their experience is of us. And I work in the personal branding arena. So personal branding is all about other people's experience of you. And if you don't have a mechanism to be able to understand other people's feedback of you, and also incorporate that in a way that is not an attack on you, but as an opportunity for growth, then your ability to actually be fully self-aware is very limited. So both of those things are tied into your mindset. So self-awareness and also the ability to learn from other people about yourself. Both of those things are tied into mindset. And to me, personal branding, because when you have a strong personal brand that you can own, you go into the office, someone gives you feedback and you're like, oh, that's interesting, or that's a good point. I've never thought about it that way. Let me see what I can do with that. But you don't take it to be an attack on you. You take it as a piece of information that can add or can detract from your personal brand experience. And so I think that I think at the end of the day, I could talk about all of the things for all of the time. But self-awareness isn't just about you knowing yourself. There is a component of you interacting with other people, and you can only learn those things unless you interact with other people and get their feedback.
So I'm glad that I got your discussion point on that, because I'm under the same mindset of saying that there's a lot involved with that. Uh, but I take it for when I'm talking about culture, or when I'm thinking of culture, I'm thinking beginning with an individual, because it's easy to work with an individual to set a standard in a culture, and it is to can't talk, transform a culture by one individual, right? I mean, by transforming the entire culture. So if I'm looking at it from an individual standpoint, and I'm looking at it, and these are individuals and leaders and executives that I'm talking to with this, if they're being self-aware themselves, and I'm also looking at the rub-off effect, and it's amazing everything that we do. It's really the success of it comes from the rub-off effect, so at least I think, because it has to be a pattern that's replicated for it to be successful. It can't be an individual pattern that I continue to replicate myself and no one sees it as, or aware of it or responds to it, or then we're not doing anything as far as the culture is concerned, right? Because I'm just in this hamster wheel my own self. But I like how you put that before. There's so many components in there that you have to be aware of yourself besides the self-awareness of that brings a lot to the table. So when I'm thinking about that, I am thinking about maybe the next part of it, seeing that you went through that way. And I thought the next part two of this, working through our strengths to address our challenges. Now, since you've already married those two, one and two, you're so awesome with that. After the self awareness has been understood, right? Now that should point out some strengths that we have, that we should be strong enough in to address the challenges that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
All the other components, right? All right.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this one?
So one of the things that immediately comes to mind too is from the leadership perspective, it's important to remember that as leaders, we're not supposed to be good at all the things. We have strengths and we have weaknesses. Our teams have strengths and our teams have weaknesses. We're all humans, so we will have weaknesses. So I think it's just important because from the leadership perspective, sometimes people are like, oh, I need to be strong at this, and I need to be strong at this, and I need to be strong at all the things. And you just like can't be strong at all the things. So just let that go, because that'll make it a little bit easier. But at the same time, that gives you the ability to use your strengths and also the strengths of your team to address challenges. And going into what we started off talking about, being able to manage up, this is really important too, because the leaders who are above you, if there are leaders above you, they have strengths as well. Right? Even if the environment that you grew up working in were very different, every single individual's different perspective has a strength. Obviously, I don't know everybody's team, but it's really when you can approach any relationship with any member of your team with the goal of understanding their strengths and not pointing out their weaknesses, because again, just that mindset of everybody has weaknesses. I mean, the whole point here is not for me to get rid of everybody's weaknesses. It's for me to optimize everybody's strengths using my strengths. Did you guys hear that one? Optimize everybody's strengths using my strengths, not using some magic book of strengths that a good leader has.
The good leader book, right?
Yeah, that's not a thing. Although maybe one day Carl, Shawn, and I will
I
write
think,
that.
yeah,
And
don't give me no ideas. Now. You don't.
all it will say is this is unique for each person. But
Yes, I'll make sure I put that on there.
this is the point: is that not like, you know what? I don't know. I always think when I was in corporate, I was so convinced that negotiation was such an important skill for a leader. And so I took like all the training and everything in negotiation. So the first example I always think of is negotiation. But I personally don't have a huge skill of negotiation. So my goal would be to find a team member
It
who is
does.
very skilled at negotiation.
And
And
that's
this was
just
the
what it
thing.
is. It is a skill.
I was always confused because when I worked in corporate, my boss was like the queen of negotiation. That lady could negotiate, like she could sell ice to an Eskimo. That's what we say in Canada, right? Like they don't need ice. None
Yeah.
of us need ice right now, but
No.
it's like she could do that. She was so good at it, and she was so intent on me being good at it. And I'm like, there's 12 people who work for this company. Why don't I just be good at this set of things that I'm good at, and you be good at that? Because we don't need 8 people who can negotiate a deal. We need 1 person who can negotiate a deal. And so I just want, it's important to use your own strengths, going back to the self-awareness, being able to identify your own strengths, but also, like I said in the last piece, what are other people's experience of your strengths? What are some of the things that we all interact with people, right? Especially if you've led a team before, you likely have received some kind of feedback from your team about something that they liked, something that empowered them, something that made them feel good, something that made them feel like they accomplished something. And so look at those, just investigate it, right? What are those things? A lot of times when it comes to leadership, these are the soft skills or human skills or whatever they're calling them nowadays. They still don't mean as much on a resume, and that is annoying. But these are the things, being able to create the feeling of a team, people feeling safe, talking to you about things that are bothering them, right? Like those are strengths. And although they may not be related to a specific KPI or performance standard or goal or whatever, those are strengths that you have and not everybody has. And the point is not for all of the people to have those skills. The point is for you to have those skills and for you to use them wisely to address the challenges with everybody's strengths.
I like that. I like that because we're working through, which is sort of like I love the I love the simplicity that when you're working through, it's really giving you, okay, this is the tool that you're going to use. You're going to use your strengths. Now, the identifying markers is upon you what the challenges are because you're addressing the challenges, right? So if you're using your strengths to address the challenges, how are your strengths going to promote or uh, produce results with
Mhm.
these challenges? And I think that in the corporate arena and just the authentic arena, you have to work on those. And you made a very good visual of that. 12 people in a company don't take 12 people to work on it. And I have a pet peeve of that. Oftentimes you find 4 or 5 people doing the same thing. I just really have a problem with that. If it's like 10 of us in a project, I don't need 6 doing the same thing. The other 4 struggling with what's remaining to do with that. And I think a lot of times that's where people hide. Not only I think I know, a lot of times that's where the hiding comes in. Or a lot of times we can say hiding if we're looking at it in a negative, but we can also say the challenge to come in because maybe they haven't been given the opportunity or they haven't been given the push or the skills or the resources to address those challenges. So it's easy for them to hide and, maybe we fold this piece of paper and each one of us get a corner. Now, yeah, my mind tells me it doesn't take 6 people to fold a piece of paper, right? But 2 of those 6 maybe are not too confident in working on other things. So if we're working through our strengths to adjust these challenges, we have to be self-aware and promoting, like, okay, why is it taking Tracy over there with them other 5 people to fold a sheet of paper, right? So maybe let's
Well,
do
and
some work.
like we use a lot of sports
Yeah,
analogies
yeah, because we
here, right, in the show.
sportsters, you know what I mean?
This is just so like I'm thinking, you want to think about football, you want to think about basketball, you want to think about hockey, choose your sport of choice, whatever
Choose.
sport you're most familiar with. But not everybody plays the same position.
This is
right?
true.
There's one point guard on the floor on a basketball court, well, one for each team.
And I don't care how many of you shooting guards go over there to play point. I know you get out just play. I'm a point guard, so I used to get a little razz about the shooting guards coming to get the ball, want to bring it up the court. I digress. Go ahead.
Or how about a post or a center trying to bring it up the court?
Yeah, they do that a lot these days. These tall guys, right?
And you're like, it's not terrible that you have ball handling skills, but that is not the skill we capitalize on as a team, right? So like if you're a center, you're that guy who's like 7.5 feet tall, usually. The super tall guys, right? Sit under the
big
basket
one
and get
that's supposed to
rebounds
stand down in
and
the
put
post.
like little short baskets in and maybe a free throw sometimes. That's their job, right? And they know that that's their job. It's been made very clear to them that that's their job. And hey, yeah, sometimes you might bring the ball up the court. Yeah, hey, sometimes I might have to negotiate a deal, but I'm not the negotiator. Right? And so in our corporate work environments, we have the ability to look at our team the same way. This is a team and it's all of our strengths. So this guy is the point guard and his job is to bring the ball up the court and not turn the ball over, right? This is the shooting guard. His job is to shoot outside shots, mostly 3-pointers, right? And play good defense on the other people's 3-pointers, right? But he's not supposed to go in and get all the rebounds. The tall guys are supposed to go in and get all the rebounds. That's their job. And so and even in football, right? Like how many quarterbacks are there? One and a backup one. But like how many people on a football team? 22 or something?
22 out there at one time. It's 22. I think it's like
so
50
like,
some on the whole
and
team.
one of them is a quarterback. It's not all of their jobs to be the quarterback. Are you crazy? If everybody was out there trying to pretend that their job was the quarterback, it would be a disaster, right? Everybody has a job and everybody goes and does their job based on their strength. If you're the huge guy, you're a lineman and you stop the other people from hitting your guys. That's your job. Your job isn't to throw the ball. We don't care if you can throw the ball. I'm not going to train you. I'm not going to send you to training camp so you can throw as well as Tom Brady. That's a huge waste of resources. And people do this in the corporate capacity all the time, right? We're like, the last company I worked for sent every single person to Dale Carnegie training. And now I'm a big fan of Dale Carnegie training. And if you guys have the opportunity to take it, I think you should.
I think you should.
A software developer, sending him to Dale Carnegie training isn't going to add anything to the team. It might add something to him personally if he
personal development would be good, but
learn something. But like, it's not like this. And you know what? We saw it in the training feedback, right? People were like, "This was good, but doesn't really impact my job." Right?
This is true.
And so it's really important to have that clarity of people on their strengths. And also, you guys, this is a huge opportunity for us to be able to celebrate people, right? Everybody has a strength. Celebrate them for their strengths. Don't like continue to berate them and train them and retrain them on stuff that are their weaknesses. I didn't actually hire you for that. So I don't care that you're weak. You know what? I don't know. We were talking about editing earlier. Not every single person in an organization needs to be eagle eye editor for the marketing team, right? Like one person needs to be that. Not everybody, right? It's just, we forget. We think that, I feel like somehow when we get into the corporate work environment, in order to like defend ourselves, we feel like we have to be jacks of all trade instead of a
masters of none.
Right. And so it's not, I know a lot of people who are jacks of all trades and they're lovely people. It's just, they also, usually they're jacks of all trade because they feel like they have to be in order to protect themselves from something. And if you as a leader can show up and be like, you know what, you made an editing error and I don't care at all because your job here isn't editing. Right.
I got somebody for that.
Right. And even if you don't, I used to always struggle with this. The concept that's always in my head is funny because I was thinking about this in the shower this morning was the right seats on the bus. So you have a bus, right? I don't actually know, like I think the team thing is a much better analogy, but there are people on your team. We're all on a bus, right? If somebody if you've actually created an environment where somebody is like constantly poking the wheels and they could pop at any time,
Oh wow.
the guy's not in the right seat on the bus. Why do we even have that seat? That's a terrible seat. We shouldn't have that, right? And I think a lot of the times we talked about ego a little bit earlier in the show too, like when we have too much ego, and sometimes ego is attached to our strengths, right? So we have to watch this in the area.
Yeah.
If we have too much ego, we get blinded to some of these things. And if we can take a more, I'm going to use the word rational, but it doesn't seem like the right word, a rational view of that and saying like, oh, we did that at the time because it seemed like it made sense.
Seems like it's right.
But now I see it doesn't make sense and we should do something differently. And that now we're on to probably a different point that Carl Shawn on.
No,
His
and you actually, because you talked about something that after we touched on that, working through those stress to address the challenges, you kind of segue to my next point, which is step 3: appreciate cognitive diversity. Yes, 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 yes. I'm still,
it's just
I'm still learning, guys, on this side of me. I'm still
we have every single brain works differently, you guys.
learning.
Pretending
Yes.
that there's no such thing as cognitive diversity, and even if you're not even if you're not talking about neurodiversity with like ADHD and Asperger's and all of those things, even if you're not talking about that, every single human still has cognitive diversity, right? It's
Mm,
based on who they are and their individual past experiences and their individual past education and the culture they grew up in their home and in society, right? And there's zero ways for us to all think the same. It's just not a possible thing. And so this point, sorry, I get really passionate about this because I find it ridiculous, especially so our friend Dan Roth, he has this like
yes,
culture. Yes, hi. I don't think Dan is here because
he would have already said about 10 things about vulnerability.
It's true. But he has this concept. He's a recruiter and he works with culture add instead of
Yes.
culture fit. And when I think of culture fit, and I mean, quite honestly, when I was working in corporate, it made sense to me, right? Like we want to hire somebody who fits in with
Yeah.
us.
The
But at
term,
the
the
same
term makes
time,
sense.
yeah. But at the same time, now when I think about it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to create this box for another human. I'm going to force a human to fit into this box, even though I didn't have a specific human in mind when I created this box. I just made a random box out of
Made a
ideas that I
box.
have. And now I'm trying to fit a unicorn into the box, which doesn't exist, right? It just leads to disappointment for me and disappointment for the employee because nobody can meet all of those expectations, especially when one of those things is they think the same as us. If you think the same as me, I say this to everybody in my community because I have a lot of people in my just like in my business peeps and all of those things that challenge my perspective. And I was like,
Yeah.
if you guys all thought exactly the same way as me, what would be the point of me hanging out with you? I would already know all those things, right? I don't
Yeah.
learn, I don't grow, I don't innovate, I don't have an opportunity for creativity, right? Like I just be and I blah, like that's not my preferred state of being. And when it comes to business, most businesses that don't grow die.
This is the reason. And the big term, the way that I thought about it in the process that we're talking about with the creating the culture, because mind you, we're staying along that graphic of creating. So this is something that is within our realm of power of putting into the things that we want this to be a part of, right? So diversity is definitely what we want to be a part of any culture that we have. The cognitive diversity is what everybody has and what everybody brings to the table, right? So like you said so good, it's just that process of different people acquiring the knowledge and their understanding in whichever realm or situation that they came about that knowledge. A lot of it is parental upbringing, those you associate with, jobs or titles or things that you've held. There's a lot of way that you get that cognitive diversity there. But I put for to stand out the word in front of it,
Mhm.
appreciate, because I think that everybody brings to the table the cognitive diversity. Everybody is aware of that. Some people try to not let others know about that. Some try to hide that that's in other people. those processes, right? But if we appreciate that, therein lies creating the culture, because I'm appreciating the different knowledge that you're bringing to the table. The different, not only that, just the aspect of how you process it, your experiences dealing with it. All of those are nuances that we can really use in a culture. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we don't apply those in the culture with the ones that bring it. Because first and foremost, we often go with the attitude-ish about it. But you bring that in here, that ain't how I grew up, or that ain't, you know what I mean. We always
Mm.
jump to the part of um, fighting against it instead of appreciating it, instead of seeing and understanding that, okay, what you bring to the table, it may not be. I might have liked greens growing up as a kid, but you might have liked starches. So greens wasn't your thing, right? So now I'm gonna have an attitude with you in this culture because you a greens person, and I'm a starch person. So that, I'm just putting something that's simplistic in play. But this is how it really formats itself in a culture. And this is how it really divides and get division started. Because it started with that, right? And then it creates the cliques, right? And then it creates the,
Mhm.
oh, she like what I like, so we definitely be friends. Because we don't appreciate the cognitive diversity that's brought into every single workplace corporation that it is. And we check all the boxes off on the diversity, and we have it there, but we never utilize it because we don't appreciate it and we don't include it. And that's why I think that it's important.
Well, and I think as a leader, we have a really cool opportunity to even go one step farther, right? If you feel like right now you're not at the stage of appreciating, then
Appreciating.
let's start there. Um,
Yes.
and as a leader, when we talk about leading by example,
Mhm.
right? How much easier could that be absorbed into the rest of the culture if we actually celebrated cognitive diversity? Like, we celebrated those people who came and challenged our opinion. We celebrated that we didn't actually go with idea number one because we had a group brainstorm and then came up with idea number 37, which was far superior to idea number one, right? Like, what gets celebrated becomes the culture. And
Yeah.
so when we can look at these things, and like we've talked about self-awareness, celebrating self-awareness. We've talked about using our strengths, right? Celebrating people's strengths, celebrating cognitive diversity. When you get to do those things, and even if you only get to do that in your team right now and the large corporation as a whole isn't doing that, the you get to feel that difference that you've made on
Yeah.
those people. And they're going to be the type of people. I've talked about this in episodes before, how like when I left the company I was working for, almost every one of my team members left as well. It's because they didn't have that same experience being created for them after I left. And so I wanted to just remind us all that we have the ability to celebrate these things, and let's celebrate those. Like, let's practice. We can practice start celebrating those things about ourselves, right? Celebrating ourselves, celebrate those moments where you realize that you were being self-aware and you're like, wow, I felt like really angry in that scenario. Why did I feel angry in that scenario? Oh, that
Why?
is really good self-awareness. You might not even be able to answer that question why you felt
No.
angry, but you practicing the skills of self-awareness. Same with cognitive diversity, right? Being like, oh, that perspective is completely different than mine.
Yeah.
How
And
does that
appreciating it.
challenge? Yeah, how does that challenge my perspective? How can I look at the world differently now because you were able to share that with me? And even just like step one is being able to celebrate those things within ourselves. And then step two is us being able to bring those things to the table, to the other people, to our teammates, to our even like lateral coworkers, and being like, hey, I realize that this conversation that we just had, we did not agree on a lot of things. And at the same time, I have a greater perspective on how we could make this better as an entire company because you came and shared your opinion. So thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Like, how would that make you guys feel? Right? Like, what if you were that person and someone else said that to you? Right? How would
it would
that make you
definitely,
feel? We have the ability as leaders to be able to do this every day.
and we can have this as a culture, being that even if it's not the leader per se that's doing this, the culture the direct the attention and the actions of those in the culture. Because if I'm seeing this and that, and this is why I really have, yeah, I guess I'm gonna say it. This is why I have a problem with cultures, right? And I do use the term problem because I'm kind of careful with the words that I use to describe things because I don't want anyone to get the wrong misconception of how I think about things. But I want to be specific in this one thing because I really, it makes me irate to see that culture manifests itself continuously not being corrected. And we've gotten so comfortable in how the dynamic of this culture is that it's feasible for everyone to continue to matriculate this action and this activity in this culture. Everyone, if you take a poll, 9 times out of 10, and I'll go that high, will automatically tell you in their personal perception, their personal understanding, and their personal view, this culture is horrible, right? But
Also, horrible, one of those words that isn't really super productive when you're sharing with people.
yes,
Have nothing to do
no,
with
how's the
that. Like,
culture? Oh, it's
what am I
horrible.
supposed to do with that? I'd like, you know what? Did I tell you guys this? I got on, so the company I used to work for, we did 360-degree reviews annually. And I had a teammate once tell me that I was poison.
Oh, wow,
That's it.
wow,
No reason
wow,
why I was poisoned,
wow.
or in what specific
You just
scenarios I
deaf.
was poisoned, or how I might be able to not be poisoned. And like, my boss was really confused because it was just that one person, and everybody else was
I
like,
think he was
Tracy's
deaf to
such a
that
good
person.
teammate, blah blah. And I was like, I'm all about constructive feedback, right? But
That was
that's not constructive,
destructive,
right? Yeah, that's just
destructive, right?
destructive, not
Yeah,
constructive,
yeah,
right? And so it's just remembering those types of things too, right?
yeah.
Like, we, one of the things that this also made me think of, Carl, Shawn, was um things that get celebrated versus documented values.
Mm,
And so the company I worked for as well, this was one of the biggest like breaking points for me because everybody knew everybody knew the values, and everybody could point out ways in which people on the team had demonstrated the values. And we actually, like, we had this whole cheers thing where you could like cheers other team members, and it was specifically related for
everybody
those
knows your names.
thing, yeah, like to related to the values. And at the same time, so we did that weekly.
Mm.
Right? We did the thing where you do the cheers, and I was one of the people who did the most cheers, right? Because I
I can
believe
see
in
you cheering.
cheersing.
Yeah, I can see you cheering.
Yeah, I'm a natural born cheerleader, although I never actually cheered. I'm more the basketball player side. But the things that got celebrated, the things that everybody was all like, woohoo, and you would get a promotion, or you would do this, or you would do that,
Mhm.
not related to the values, right? And
Mm.
so it was a really tricky scenario to look at. Okay, well, I have this practice of recognizing the corporate values in my team, but so they like kind of get celebrated. They get celebrated
Kind
by
of.
me, they get celebrated within teams, but on a corporate level, those things are not getting celebrated. Although, like, quarterly, if you got the most cheers, you would get like a $15 gift card to Starbucks or something, which is nice. But at the same time, like, all the big things, promotions, title changes, increase in salary, those things that actually mean something to a person, um, none of them were tied to the values. And so this is why I think, and it probably scarred me more than it scarred other people, that that celebrating the things that actually demonstrate the culture we're trying to build for people is hugely important. So if you're in a management position right now and you look at the types of things you're celebrating, look at those really hard and see if that's tied into what you would consider authentic leadership.
Yes, and that brings us to our fourth point that I wanted to make today. Because we're on a roll, and it is so amazing that no, me and Tracy didn't go over these in the essence of
No.
talking because I like to carry stuff conversational, uh, and I like how we have, in essence, threaded the needle in connection to each one of these points, right? And this is the importance of what I'm trying. what I'm trying to put out on display for creating the culture. It's an individual thing that we can do, though it may seem to be an uphill battle. When you get some kind of understanding of how you can move about freely in the fight. That's what I call it. There are opportunities at times to land punches in any fight. You don't go into the fight just swinging wildly. You don't go into the fight without stamina. And when you go through all of these steps, they're giving you tools to take into fight. And in each and every opportunity that you have to land a blow, right? And that's about as simplicity as sports people can put it, right? Because we just love. Whenever I see the center down low, I could drop him the pass. He turn around and score, right? Not up there with me shooting a 3-pointer, but I may get some big difference on these new age NBA kids. They 7 feet 3 and they shoot 3 pointers. So nobody wants to go down to the basket. But anyway, I digress, right? But after the diversity and you appreciated the cognition of that, then I thought about this one. You can close it out with the encouragement of empathy, right? Notice I didn't say sympathy. Notice I didn't say oversharing. I didn't say any of these things. I said empathy, right? There's a clear understanding of what empathy is and how to use it. And I don't think that it is encouraged enough in culture. That really is the reason why the mischievousness, I'll call it that, so we'll stay on that. The mischievousness of what goes on in the culture continues to replicate because encouragement of empathy with those that are suffering does not resonate with those that are continuing the foolishness. So what do you think about the encouragement?
I think this is very true. And I think it is really tied into what we were just talking about. Is when I've used the phrase before, I think on the show, golden handcuffs, right? So it's almost like in a lot of scenarios, companies will be like, okay, one of the things we're going to do here is encourage empathy. So I'm going to give everybody one way to encourage empathy amongst their team members. That's not authentic because that's not my way I would encourage empathy. That's not the way I would show up to be empathetic. Those aren't the words I would say. And then doing those types of things also makes people afraid. It makes people afraid of showing up, quote unquote, wrong because you've defined what is the right way to show up. And when it comes to empathy, the way I show up and be empathetic is different than the way that Shawn shows up and to be empathetic. And also, there are scenarios that I will walk into where like my empathy switch will just turn on based on who I am and what I have experienced. And Shawn is someone different and he's experienced different things. And his empathy switch, now we all have an empathy switch. His empathy switch is going to turn on in a different scenario than when my empathy switch would turn on. So what happens so it should. Agreed. And so what happens when we create this focus in a company of being able to say, this is the one way that we're going to encourage empathy, it doesn't work because that's not my way of doing it. And then I don't show up authentic. So even if I'm doing that thing, the likelihood of me identifying as feeling empathetic at the time is low because I don't feel that way. You might have told me that that's what I feel, but that's everybody's favorite thing, right? When they get told what they're feeling and they're not really feeling that. And you're like, oh yeah, you don't know me at all.
Yeah, you really don't. Right?
When we're talking about authentic leadership, you have to create the space for people to show empathy in their own way. And that is being able to be flexible, right? Being able to, again, like celebrate this one really weird way that your coworker showed another coworker empathy, right? And celebrating that and not just celebrating the one way. Like one of the values that always just like it gets under my skin that a lot of corporations use is cares about people, right? Because they use it as a blanket statement for what it looks like to cares about people. And cares about people ties a lot into empathy for me because it's about kindness, it's about compassion, it's about understanding, it's about empathy, it's about a lot of things. But then they create this one corporate definition of what it looks like to care about people. And so, for example, we're doing this thing where we celebrate the boxed in version of what that is. What everybody at the company thinks cares about people looks like is helping your teammate when they don't know what to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, that is one way to show up and care about people. Another way to care about people is to give me the day off when I find out that my dad has COVID, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
that would be a way for someone to show. I'm self-employed now, but that's how I show myself
Yeah.
empathy, is saying like, I
Take the
can't
day off.
work today. Are you crazy? Like, this is just shaking my whole core, and so now I like gonna go deal with that, right? Like, that's a different way of caring about people. And I have dealt with pregnancy loss in the past. I have a lot of empathy for people who are dealing with that because I have dealt with it. And so I probably have more empathy for somebody
Yeah.
than someone who hasn't. So like, if I had a teammate, I was working for a big organization, I had a teammate who had enough trust in me to tell me that, and I am handcuffed in being able to give them like a week off, because that would be like the thing I would think of immediately is like, you need to take time off. You need to process this yourself. I don't want you to use your vacation. I don't want you to think that you have to like pay the company back for this. You need your space and I'm giving it to you. If I was not capable of doing that, I wouldn't feel like I was being empathetic, and I would be angry at my work culture, at the business, for handcuffing me, not being able to show up with empathy. So even if you were like, oh yeah, you can, empathy means that you can take your team for beers after you finish a big project, right? Like, I don't care. Like, half my team doesn't even drink, right? Like, what is this? That's that doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for the team, right? So when you look at it from that authentic leadership perspective, I really want you guys to look at all of these things that we've talked about today, and remember that they're all different for every single person. How I show up to be empathetic looks different. So if I'm, as an authentic leader, and I agree with this point, I might sound like I don't, but I do agree with this point about, as an authentic leader, encouraging empathy in order to build that culture of authenticity. You have to remember that that looks different for every single person. And ideally, create an environment where it's safe to fail, right? So I
Absolutely.
know that I can show up, and this was the way I tried to be empathetic today, and it didn't work because whatever other human is in a completely different space than me and has different experiences and all of that, being able to create ties back into self-awareness, right? All of these things are tied together, in
Yes.
them being able to understand that they are not, that's okay, right? Like, this was an opportunity for you to learn something about yourself. You have now learned something about yourself, and that's good. That
Yes,
allows
absolutely.
your personal brand to evolve. And that is what we're meant to do as humans. We're meant to evolve. And so that was just the one thing that really sprung up for me on this point, was that,
That was
don't do it all the
excellent
time.
because we totally tied all of these in. And I wrote up I guess a step. I put everything in steps, right? Because steps are easy for me. Steps are pretty much easy for everyone, and they make everything so simple. Yes, someone felt the same thing about your empathetic handcuffs. Yes, that's because we hide by words, and Tracy know that me, I am twofold. I am a lover of words and I am a hater of words. And how can I be that person? Simply because I am. I understand words because I apply words in the meaning of what they mean to me. So they're important to understand how the application of the meaning of a word is in my life compared to that of someone else, because your understanding of empathy and my understanding of empathy may not match. So therein lies the dictionary telling us what that means does no good for either one of us. So with us interacting with each other, maybe we need to understand each other's definition of empathy. Therefore, we can coexist, right? No, no, I'm not. I'm not getting this. This. license and all of this stuff together to get rid of the dictionary. You guys calm down a bit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not doing a
You can
petition.
just know
Yeah,
we're always going to talk about some kind of
yes,
definition, one way or
absolutely. One way or another, it's going to fit in. If you're talking to me, there's two things you're going to get. You're going to get me and my discuss and disdain with dictionary and how we apply the words to our lives, and you're also going to get vulnerability. So, in essence of those two things, you're going to get a great thing from me, Carl Shawn. Right? Make sure that you get
Oh,
that.
let's talk about this for a second, Carl Shawn, because
Sure, we got a
you
couple
had
minutes. Go
four
ahead.
things on here today, none of
Yeah,
which were specifically related to vulnerability. So before we
and
run out of
I
time,
yes.
you want to talk about
Let's talk about the
how
vulnerability.
vulnerability comes to play in all those things?
It does come to play in that, and I'll give you one example of each of the four that I identified. I didn't put that on there on purpose because I always talked about that. But Tracy, I do thank you for rear-ending that for me and bringing it back around. I do appreciate that. Dan will be so proud of you. We promote this self-awareness. When you're promoting the self-awareness, just take away the promote out of that. And vulnerability is just you being self-aware of you, your circumstances, your surroundings. What are you doing? Be aware of that. What are you bringing to the table? That's being vulnerable. I may not know all of these things. I don't have the answer for all of these things, but I'm aware that I don't. So therefore, I'm going to seek help in finding out the answers. This is what leadership have a problem with. They're put in leadership. They're given those titles, and they are taking on the mantra of that I know everything, which is not the truth because you don't. And even if you're so well versed in the job that you do, there are circumstances that come up that you will not know the answer to. That's just how it works, right? So therefore, you got to be self-aware in your knowledge of yourself and say, you know what, Tracy works pretty well with this. She's a great problem solver. Let's see if we can get Tracy to utilize her skills to take care of this and take it off my hands, thereby delegating it to someone who's well more rounded with accomplishing your goal, right? So that's the first lesson on that. So now to be that, now this is a prime example of being vulnerable because you're working through the strengths you have to address the challenges. So yes, by me being a vulnerable person, I understand my vulnerability. I'm, self-aware of who I am. I'm confident in what I am. My confidence now should address some of the challenges that are facing my work area, my work culture, my work environment. How can I, as being a confident one, show someone else how to use their skills to be that same one to address the challenges that we're facing in this work environment? And when I say work, this we're talking about then we're talking about leadership, so we might as well keep it with work related, right? But this can also go across the board because when you're authentic, you can bring that authentic you into any relationship that you have. And you can also be that as a strength to address challenges in marriage, in working together with spouses and partners, in working together with raising children, and working together for something as simple as who's going to cook tonight. You can use that
That's my
vulnerability.
husband's strength, not mine.
So you can use those strengths to address those challenges and how minute they may be or how large you may think they are, right? So
And
that,
one of the things I just want to
yeah,
reiterate on that point is,
yes.
do you guys hear how Carl Shawn is talking about how vulnerability is also related to strengths? I think a lot of time people,
Oh, what do you know? I'm saying so much.
but I just think there's so much that we still think, like, even when you see somebody show up vulnerably on LinkedIn, it's usually because they're saying that something is hard or something is wrong, and
Absolutely.
this is what they're dealing with and they're trying not to deal with it, right? Myself included. Most of the times when Carl Shawn comes to my post about how vulnerable it is, it's because I'm feeling crappy and I'm sharing the fact that I'm feeling
Yeah.
crappy or I am feeling like I can't do a thing. And so there is this flip side opportunity to show up and relate vulnerability to your strengths. It's not about pretending you don't have those, right? There's a level of vulnerability involved. So I felt like you glazed over
Yeah.
that, and I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I'll tell you, it's always good to have a helping hand, right? Because a lot of people equate that with that, and that is really what I've taken on as my directive for 2022. And that is 2021. You got a lot of feedback from me and a lot of information from me concerning changing the narrative, right? I didn't do a lot of time and I didn't spend a lot of time on steps and how to practices of because I got a step plan of how I'm doing this, right? First of all, I got to get your mindset to come out of the weakness arena and come into the strength arena. because being vulnerable is just that. It's strength. It's strength in you. It's strength to know who you are. It's strength in building the person that you are, and it's strength in cutting away the shame and being authentic. Right. So all of this leads into the same thing, and it ties within that. So this year I'm going about vision. I want you to see how strong you can be being vulnerable. No, I didn't say oversharing. No, I didn't say telling me all your bad stuff. No, I said in being vulnerable. Vulnerable is just the ability to understand that there's something you're having a problem with, something you're not sure of, and something you're not that you're uncertain about. Now, in that perspective, you use it yourself how you want to, intentionally. That's my next phrase, intentionally, right? So when you're using that, you're intentionally appreciating the cognitive diversity because you're already at a point of being self-aware. You're already understanding your strength, and now you can appreciate what someone brings to the table that you don't have. That's really where diversity fits the plug in. No, not the square plug and a square hole, round peg, whatever it is. Round peg, square hole. I know I'm not too much into geometry, so I don't figure that out too tight. But this is where you really have an opportunity to shine because your vulnerability says, okay, I can truly appreciate that. I can appreciate what Tracy brings to the table in her cognitive diversity. First and foremost, the diversity is, hey, do you see me? You see her? We see that part of the diversity, right? But there's also levels of things and understanding and experiences that she brings that I don't have. I will never have, and I will never understand. So this is where I, as a vulnerable person, say, "Oh, you know what? I appreciate that." Now I think outside of me. This is appreciating the cognitive diversity. Now I think outside of how I grew up, how I perceive things, how things look to me, and I take on what it looks like to her, how it makes her feel. This is an important point of being vulnerable. Yes, and of course, my last but not least, the empathy part of it. Can't be vulnerable without being empathetic, And empathetic is not pathetic. It's not sympathetic. I know they carry those last few parts of the nomenclature there, but just having the empathy and the understanding, encouraging understanding. That's really where I would like to put empathy. Encouraging things that someone is going through, or something is if something is happening to them, or a way that things are making them feel. Though you may not understand it, because a lot of people say this when you have a death, right? A lot of people say, I understand how you feel. And I said that to an individual about 20 something years ago when he lost his brother. I had never lost mine, so I couldn't. But as long as we were friends, I thought I was in a place where I can say that to get on the level of understanding the pain he felt. And he rattled off at me, and that was the first time that we ever had crosswords. And he said to me in a loud voice, he said, "You can't possibly understand how I feel." And that shook me to the core. And that let me know that encouraging empathy is not putting yourself alongside them to be parallel. It's simply understanding and giving them space to express that. And that's what I didn't allow him to. I didn't allow him to space. I put myself in his boat and I shouldn't have been there. And he told me that in that sense, and that was we haven't had those kind of words ever since then. And I came back because I got the knowledge of understanding that I had no idea what he was feeling. So when someone else is
And that's
going through things with
okay,
you, yes,
right?
and that was
I
fine. That
Yeah.
was fine.
I think that this one specifically, I feel like for real empathy, you
Yes,
have to have that level of vulnerability because being able to
absolutely.
say, I have no idea what you're going through right now, and I'm
Yes.
here for you. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what you need me to be here for, and I'm
Mhm.
here,
And that's what
right?
he looked, and that's what he looked for me for. But I took it as a cognitive understanding of if I get to his level and explain that I understand, maybe that would soothe what he was going through. And that was actually the flip emotion. He actually got irate and mad about the, the audacity of. So we have to be careful with that. Oh my God, Tracy, we've come up on another hour. It has been
I
fun.
know.
It has been fun. But I do have something that I want you guys to look at. I want you guys to go in. I want you guys to join your business peeps. We carry on, and we're a couple of minutes behind, but yeah, we're the curators of the space, right? So we are going next level in talking about this authentic leadership, and we have the authentic mastermind, right? The authentic leadership mastermind where myself, Tracy Boris, and Tara Argo. We share a stage of where we bring three sets of experiences in three different sets of expertise, and we give you an opportunity to discuss some of the things that ails you. Right? We give you a safe space to do that with. We give you a place to practice accountability. Yeah, I know. Everybody don't like that word, but we give you a space for it, and we give you a space for you to be authentic. Uh, Let your hair down, as you see that I do all the time. It gives you a place to let your hair down, and it gives you an opportunity to run ideas and obstacles and things that are you're struggling with, or things that maybe you don't have to understand, or just to hear someone else's perspective. It's a great community. I need you guys to click on that, join the community, and meet us in the Impact membership. Tracy.
And if you want to get a little taste of the experience before you commit to being a peep, we have an open house tomorrow at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys are interested in checking out what that might look and feel like before joining, let me know. Let Shawn know. We can send you the link to the event, and you can check it out. We also, so I have. This is probably a surprise for Shawn too, but I've been offering it to a bunch of people. So if you guys are interested specifically in the Authentic Leadership Mastermind, that's part of the Impact membership with your business peeps. It happens every Monday right after the show, except for stat holidays, but we bungled it up today. So stay tuned for that next time. But it is about giving you, apparently my camera is gone, about giving you that space to practice and explore what authentic leadership is for you. And if you want to see what that looks like, specifically experience the mastermind, because the open house is more so experience peepery and what it's like on the mastermind style networking.
Peepery, I like that.
I know, I'm all over this word peepery. I've totally invented it. I'm gonna make it it's gonna get an Urban Dictionary one day. But if you want to try out specifically the Authentic Leadership Mastermind, where we're talking about authentic leadership and your challenges in that space, reach out to me, reach out to Shawn, reach out to Tara Argo if she's your preferred contact as well. Let us know. We'll send you the link so you can check out one of the sessions for free and make sure that it's right for you, because the point is for this to be a good fit for where you are currently at in your authentic leadership journey. And it's supposed to, we're trying to maintain a small group of people so that we all have the opportunities to talk and bring our challenges and everything to the table. So if that's something you would like to test out, let me know. I will hook you up.
Yes, we have an open house, and I love open houses because we are getting ready to go back to school, correct? Right. The break is about to be over, and that's for these college kids anyway. The break is about to be over, and we're getting ready to go back to school, and this is the Authentic Leadership 101. So why not carry that a step further and go to the mastermind? Come to the open house, check out the peeps. Come and try it in. It's a test run. It's a vehicle. We give you the keys. We let you drive it, and we don't even ride with you. We just let you drive it.
Well, we always ride with you. Peeps, ride or die.
Yeah, bro. Peeps, we ride or die. We always ride with you is what I should have said. Right? We always ride with you, but we're there.
But we don't ride. We're not like those annoying backseat drivers that are trying to tell you how to drive.
Yeah, make a left.
We're just like your backup singers when you're singing to your jam.
Yeah, Gladys Knight and the Pips. You know what I mean?
That's
We're
what
the
we
Pips. Yeah, we're the Pips and the Peeps. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for coming out. Thank you all for continuing to join in the conversation. And for those who join in the Peeps, we look to see you in the next session. And we'll see you guys on next Monday, where we will come back to you with another fly edition of Authentic Leadership 101. Thank everybody.
And remember, if you guys, these conversations are for you guys. So if you're listening today and you're like, I really would love to talk about blah X topic, let us know. We'll talk about it in a future episode. This is for you guys.
Yes, don't send blah, but make sure you put something.
That will be very helpful. Remember that piece we talked about constructive feedback.
Yes, don't give the destructive, because apparently Tracy's poison. So let's not give the destructive, and let's get the constructive. Yes, you see what I'm dealing with here, right? It is Monday, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and we'll see you guys on next week. Pieces.